Hello, my friends. It is Sunday, October 20th, 2024, and this is the Daily Brief. There are 1,340 Russian casualties. It's high, but not as high as the 14 and 1,500 that we saw over the course of the week. 12 tanks off the battlefield, 39 armored fighting vehicles, 17 artillery systems, 41 vehicles, and fuel tanks. Now, I do my best to provide context in the war in Ukraine, and that's what you're going to get more out of the early segments here is greater context. Zero of two Iskander ballistic missiles, they just don't seem to be able to hit ballistic missiles. 44 out of 49 Shaheeds either shot down or downed by electronic warfare. Okay, here's some context. Andrew Perpetua saying, if we see 90 to 100 deaths per day on drone footage, and the Russian obituaries are suggesting around 200 die per day. Okay, so what's that? That's already just told you is that what we can what we can count on is about 200 per day. Maybe it's three, maybe it's four, and the rest is casualties. We just don't know. But that's a pretty high percentage. And so he says, then I suppose you should stop saying that 70% die from artillery wounds. Okay, now artillery is known as the king of battle for a reason, and that has historically been true. But drones are a whole new thing. In fact, I'm going to do a video just about drone warfare. I'm going to release this afternoon, just about drone warfare and how that's changing the battlefield and how we better pay attention to how drone warfare works. Andrew Perpetua also says this, from the data we have, infantry are more likely to be killed by a drone inside a trench than outside a trench. Like, think about that. So the trench isn't really safe, but they're much less likely to be killed in the dugout. That's like an enclosure. So in a trench itself, which would have kept you safe, all other things being equal, from the enemy on the other side, you're much more likely to be killed by a drone. Okay, Russia's military launched another wave of missiles and drones across Ukraine. Ukrainian officials said on October 20th, with an energy installation hit and multiple injuries reported on another strike. Okay, so they just keep doing the same thing. It's the same playbook because there's not enough anti-aircraft missiles or anti-drone rockets, whatever, to be able to knock this down. They keep going after it, and it's going to make for a hard winter, and we're going to talk about that in just a moment. Last night, Russians struck the center of Zaporizhia with guided aerial bombs, injuring dozens of people. So that's still going on. This is Zelensky saying, every day Russia strikes our cities and communities. This week, Russian T have used more than 20 missiles of various types, 800 guided aerial bombs, and more than 500 attack drones of various types against Ukraine. That's this one calendar week. Yeah. And last week, he was saying about the same thing. And the week before, about the same thing. Ukrainian warriors repulsed another massive attack in Kupiansk direction. Remember, they're pressing from the east westward toward Kharkiv, toward Kupiansk. They destroyed 8 Russian IFVs and 3 tanks. 6 more IFVs were damaged. That's infantry fighting vehicles. Russians' plans failed. Ukraine holds Kursk despite massive assault. So the Russians really want Kursk back, and the Ukrainians are doing a pretty good job hanging on to that ground. Now, the Kursk incursion really changed the dynamics of the war in a significant way. Just crossing over the border into Russia really altered the center of gravity of what was going on. It was kind of feeling a little deadlocked on the front line, and then this happened, and Russia really had to change their plans. But it had a different effect as well, and that's this. Kursk incursion speeds up Ukraine-Russia POW swaps. 4 major prisoner swaps occurred within just 2.5 months following Ukraine's Kursk operation. So that was good. We pointed that out at the time, just how many, like every day it seemed I was showing more videos of POWs and more videos of POWs. Okay. Russian attack cuts power to 37,000 Ukraine's Sumy Oblast as temps drop to 2 degrees Celsius or 36 Fahrenheit. That's just above freezing, and it's going to be a hard, hard winter. Guerrilla sabotage in occupied Ukraine's Kherson region. The Atesh guerrilla movement destroyed a relay cabinet, and that sabotage and slow down their advancement. Overnight, more than 100 Ukrainian drones attacked various Russian regions. Russia's defense ministry claims that air defenses shot down 110 Ukrainian drones over 7 regions. Now, I only saw reports over a handful of these, but I'll show you these few. Drone strikes sanctioned Russian explosives plant in central Nizhny Novgorod Oblast. The governor said that air defense repelled the attacks, but witnesses reported smoke. The attack on the Russian plant, confirmed by the Ukrainian SBU sources, drones struck the enterprise, which produced explosives, shells, bombs, and warheads for the war in Ukraine. So this was a good hit. Now, a second place, Ukraine attacks a Russian airfield. Fighter jets may be hit, but we do not know that. Drones attacked an infrastructure of the Lipetsk-2 military airfield, Russia's Lipetsk region. In particular, ammunition depots, fuel, oil storage facilities, and aviation equipment were targeted. It's known that as Su-34s, Su-35, and MiG-31 aircraft are based at the airfield. Now, if they're hitting an airfield, why aren't they going after these? It's not that necessarily that they're not going after these, but these can move where the ammunition depot and fuel and oil storage facilities have a hard time picking up and flying away. Okay, the conventional wisdom in Ukraine is that their biggest mistake was to give up nuclear arms. The U.S. has never protested against Israel having nuclear arms, and it has not bombed North Korea because it has nukes. The U.S. promotes nuclear proliferation through its policies. Well, he's kind of right about this, but I would add that we're accidentally promoting nuclear proliferation by our current policies, because by not supporting Ukraine and Russia being able to say we have nukes and we can use them against Ukraine, and taking this position where we are being deterred by Russia because of those nukes, the message being sent out to the rest of the world's authoritarians is, if you have nukes, you can do what Russia's doing. And so we're doing this accidentally. Radio Free Europe was once created to break up Soviet censorship. Industrialists like Ford and Rockefeller were co-founders. It's paid for by the U.S. Congress. But now Apple is blocking Radio Free Europe in Russia at the request of the Kremlin. How about that? So this comment is really prescient. Okay, deep breath. I think we may look back at this as the first great information war, except we're already 8 years in. The first great information war began in 2014. The invasion of Ukraine is the latest front, and the idea that it doesn't already involve us is fiction, a lie. And then I started thinking about this. When did we start calling World War II World War II? Well, according to Grok, which is AI, just asking the question, it was as early as 1941 that some newspapers and magazines started calling the conflict the Second World War. But that means that it had been going on for a number of years. 1939 was the invasion of Poland. Now, the IMF is predicting that the war in Ukraine isn't ending anytime soon. Maybe it'll wind down in 2025 or mid-2026. And the downside, previously the IMF indicated a likelihood of combat operations ending by late 2024. That's not likely to happen. In fact, I did this as a poll yesterday. What is most likely to happen? Ukraine is welcomed into NATO soon. Only 6% of you think that that's the case. Ukraine's defeated in 2025. That's next year, remember. Only 4%. Ukraine's involved in a protracted war that does not end in 2025. That means it goes into 2026. 70% of you think that. And Russia's defeated in 2025, 20%. So that seems to gel with what we saw here with the IMF prediction. Okay, Anton Gerashenko talking about you got to hold on. Just listen to this, though. It's optimistic. As I wrote in the summer, this fall and winter may be very difficult. Yes, things are consistently bad, but the key word here is not bad, but consistently. We have not been defeated. Our allies have not abandoned us. The front line has not been broken through. Our military and industry continues to work and develop. The enemy has not captured a single regional center. Logistics is functioning. Air defense defends cities. The military command maintains control. The parliament is working. Volunteers are working. Taxes are being paid. Russian oil and weapons depots are burning. Wheat is being harvested. Russians are now doing everything that they can to make Ukrainian society collapse. Russia is counting on swaying public opinion. In the West, convince the West to stop supporting Ukraine. In Ukraine, to convince Ukrainians to stop fighting for their independence, believing that the West has abandoned Ukraine. Naturally, Russia is trying to use its entire propaganda machine. Everyone in Ukraine understands that for us, defeat means not peace under Russian influence, but Bucha. It's important to hold on and stand firm, to not sink into despair, and to not give up, and not to spread panic. I think he's right. I mean, all those things are true. They're happening simultaneously. Gary Kasparov said there's a dismal phenomenon since the end of the Cold War, a free world that has forgotten that evil exists and forgotten what victory looks like. Today, leaders think that everything must be a compromise, a win-win. No, no compromise with evil. Gabrielis Landsbergis adds to that, why do we call it hybrid warfare? Because if we called it T, you know what I mean by T, then we'd have to do something about it. And we're just not willing to do that. There's means, but there's not the will in the West. Finally, first calls from families from our defenders who are now safely back home from Russian captivity. In their exchange, it was a complete surprise for them, so I'm so happy for them. They're calling the 95 prisoners of war that were returned yesterday are getting to call their loved ones and tell them that they're back home and that they'll be home soon. And this is what Ukraine is fighting for. All right, my friends, that's all that I have for you. Thank you for the likes, the shares, the subscribes, and thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.